guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's been about a month since we did our last episode of Ninjago Face Off. That was episode 6. And no, the series is not yet over. So just because I have some free time, I wanted to do another episode of Face Off. So this is episode 7 of Ninjago Face Off. Just a reminder for what Face Off exactly is. It's a series in which we compare two or three different things that have some kind of relationship to each other. You may be wondering, what would the relationship between the skeletons and the Oni be? Well, there is no real relationship, but for me, these are my two least favorite armies of Ninjago. So I'm going to compare them and ultimately decide which of these two least favorite armies is the better one. So we'll get started by talking about the skeletons first. So I honestly feel like the skeletons were a pretty bad army because first of all, they've had the shortest screen time of any army, having 44 minutes while the Oni had double that time. Sure, the skeletons have popped up in later installments such as Day of the Departed, but the pilots really was their main time. But anyways, Garmadon was the main villain of the pilots, and the skeletons were really just the people he was using to kind of get his golden weapons in his hands. So aside from that, the skeletons didn't really have any own backstory or any focus, which is why we have Samukai, who is a pretty lame character in most people's opinions. But honestly, on another perspective, I feel like LEGO is really holding these guys back from being better. Their designs are really bad, to be honest, and some of them just look like evil clowns, whereas the other ones with the skull-like heads, which would be the Skulkin Generals like Knuckle, Cruncha, Samukai, and Whiplash, those guys looked pretty bad too, and it just didn't work out in animation form. These guys could have looked amazing had LEGO not been animating it, had it not been in the LEGO style animation. I think these guys would have looked so scary, and it really would have looked amazing. But I feel like LEGO, in terms of design, was holding these guys back, and in the end, we just got a bunch of creepy clown guys who didn't look that good either. So then, anyways, the skeletons are also kind of dumb too, which is another thing that does make me feel as if they are one of the worst armies out there. They are just pretty incompetent, honestly. They don't know how to get simple tasks done, and they're pretty stupid, so yeah, there's that too. And it just feels like part of them are also there for comic relief, like you have Knuckle and Cruncha, who are kind of like the second in commands of the skeleton army, and they are purely comic relief characters. So I don't know, I honestly feel like these guys were not really supported by LEGO and the pilot season, seeing as the pilot season did not allow them to really shine, and LEGO in terms of design made them appear pretty bad, honestly. Now moving on to the Oni, these guys very quickly gained the reputation of Ninjago's most underdeveloped villains. And it's weird that people don't generally consider the skeletons to be underdeveloped, because they had half the time that the Oni did. But I would actually have to agree with the statement, because the Oni are foreshadowed in Seasons 8 and 9 too. And the skeletons are really not, so there's not as much hype. But yeah, people were really expecting, and naturally too, people were expecting the Oni to be some of Ninjago's coolest villains, seeing as Seasons 8 and 9 pretty much existed just to foreshadow the events of Season 10 and the arrival of the Oni. Instead, we got some really boring villains who just were not interesting either, so yeah, that kind of sucked. However, I will say that their designs were awesome, despite the fact that they all had the same torso, which I will add was pretty lame on LEGO's part, and the fact that a lot of them had the same head that the Omega had. The design was still awesome. It looked amazing, it was very intimidating, and it was animated beautifully too. So I will say that even though all the Oni basically looked the same, it was a good design, so I'm not, disappointed with that really, despite the fact that obviously they all look the same. These guys were to be taken seriously too, unlike the skeletons, who mainly existed for comic relief. The Oni were very serious, and they were very intimidating villains too. And, you could argue, and I would agree with this, that part of the reason why they barely have any characters or lines is simply because of underdevelopment and the fact that Season 10 is so short. But from another perspective, it's kind of because they want to portray the Oni as silent and just simple villains who are trying to invade all of the realms, which works too, in my opinion. But yeah, honestly, these guys were pretty boring villains too, and they were underdeveloped. But they were not kind of a mess in the way that the skeletons were, and I gotta say, they looked better too. But obviously the skeletons had more development than the Oni, and they were definitely a bit more interesting than the Oni too. So in the end, between the Oni and the skeletons, I would have to say that the Oni are the better of the two armies. The skeletons did not just seem like a complete thought, really, and to be honest, on screen, it kind of seemed like a mess. Didn't really seem like the writers knew where they wanted to go with the army, and they didn't really seem to serve a purpose. Well, this could be true with the Oni too, and they were a mess in their own way. I think that it was definitely less evident on screen, and they were just more of a complete thought, honestly. They were planned out better, and they were foreshadowed to which makes the Oni a bit more of a cooler army in my opinion. But yeah, it was a pretty close battle for this week's face-off. And thanks for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with anyone ever you know, and let me know which of the two armies you think is better. Once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.